have an awesome story idea that you're pumped and excited to write about. So now we're going to take this story idea and turn it into a strong foundation for your story. But how do you do that? I want you to pretend like you just woke up from a crazy dream and you ran upstairs to tell your mom or your dad about it. And you say, well, first I was at the mall and then all of a sudden Scott was there. And then Scott wasn't Scott because he had this really long hair and he kind of looked like Cousin It from that show, The Addams Family. And then all of a sudden we were flying into space and the moon went around us 3 times. And when it finished going around us the 3rd time, I turned into a mermaid. And then this giant ape showed up, but the ape had wings and his name was Gideon. And he was a monster. He was huge. And he told me that I had to go to Mars and talk to the giant squid that had settled Mars, but the giant squid was actually from Saturn. That dream is crazy. It's exciting. It's interesting. But is it a story? Not yet. Your story needs to be more than just a bunch of crazy things happening to someone. That's not a story. That's the dream. So now you get to develop that really crazy, fun, exciting thing that happened in your dream or in your what if or that character you were thinking about. You get to develop them into something deeper, something with meaning and purpose, something that feels real. The next thing I like to do once I have the very tiny seed of a story idea is to start asking it questions. One of my writing teachers, he likes to tell people to interview their characters, ask them questions. You don't have to do this where you sit down and actually write it or even talk out loud, because that would look kind of funny. But you can just in your mind think through different questions. How would your character eat their breakfast? Or what is your character's favorite color and why? Or what is their favorite family vacation? Asking these questions can really be interesting and help you get to know your character better. It's important to know your character better because you are going to take your character and make them feel real to us by letting them experience life in your story. And that life is going to have things like cause and effect. It's going to have things like challenges and conflicts. And through all of those things, your character is going to experience change. And when that happens, you have a story. A story needs a conflict and it needs a change. So when you think about Little Red Riding Hood, what's the conflict in Little Red Riding Hood? Is Little Red Riding Hood the same person that she was when she enters the woods, the beginning of the story, as she is at the end of the story? Nope, she's not. So those are 2 ways you can test your story to see if it's actually a story and not just a string of crazy things that are happening. Now, in that dream I was telling you about where I was at the mall and then Scott was there and then he was Cousin It, was there a change? Was there a conflict? Not yet. So how could I give that idea? Well, there's too many things happening in the idea. So let me just pick part of it. Let's pick the part where the giant ape with wings comes and tells me I have to go to Mars to communicate with the aliens from Saturn. Okay? So that's my what if, right? That's the world I've started to create. Now I've got to think of a conflict or a change. To help you figure this out, you can go back to those interview questions you asked your character. So what does my character want? Well, my character wants to live on Mars because Mars is cool. Maybe they've always wanted to live on Mars. Or maybe my character is going to Mars because he can't go to Earth. Maybe there's something wrong with Earth and so he needs a new home. So he wants a new home. So if that's the conflict, then he's going to start the story without a home and sad and wanting a place to belong. And when it ends the story, what should happen? It should be the opposite, right? He should end the story as feeling like he belongs on Mars with the giant squid. That's the story. And that works because we have a conflict and we have a character that has changed. How about the one where I go to the mall in my dream? So I go to the mall and Scott's there and then all of a sudden his bald head grows into this long hair and he looks like Cousin It, okay? If that's the story world, I have the story idea in the story world, what could be the change? What could be the conflict? Well, what if my hair was falling out because I got this disease, or the character's hair is falling out? And so when I see Scott, who now has a super long hair, I feel bad. And I feel like maybe I'm not good enough if I don't have hair. Could that be a story? Could that be a place to start? The character starts the story feeling bad about their body and their health, and they just feel weak and not good. But then so if that's where I start, then the end of the story is going to be the opposite. The story will end with the person loving themselves and their body no matter what, even if all their hair falls out and they're bald. And somewhere along the way, the things that happen in the story help them get to that end point. The conflict actually helps. The conflict, we think of conflict as a bad word, but your conflict helps you. It helps your character get from one spot to the next, from here where they start and then change and come here at the end. Conflict can come from someone else. It can come from the bad guy. It can come just from the world, or it can come from inside your character. But you need to have a conflict. So that's it. That's the real basics of a story. You come up with an idea that excites you, and then you put a conflict in there. You throw your character into a conflict. But before that, you have to know where your character starts and where you want your character to end. So once you have figured out your story idea, and you've figured out your conflict and how your character or your world is going to change from the beginning to the end, then you're set. Then you've got all the strong bones you need to build an awesome story. So get building. In our next video, we'll talk about those things that kind of trip us up or give us trouble. Some of those things are called writer's block. See you then.